All right, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Laura, are we able to get started now? Do we have um, participants online? Okay, great, great. All right, so good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending wherever you might be. Thank you for joining us today. Global Health Advocacy Incubator is excited to kick off this webinar series. My name is Cindy Olivares. I'm Director of Communications for the Road Safety Program. And today's webinar is centered on the phases of advocacy and messaging, specifically how to hone in on communications from building that initial awareness campaign to developing the need for country-level urgency for road safety. All right, next slide. And we have a brief agenda here today, just a quick overview. So we have an hour and a half time today. Some of the topics or activities will include a breakout session for participants. We'll also hear about case studies or campaign highlights directly from our in-country partners in the Philippines and Colombia, and some other interactive components that we hope you will find insightful. Next slide, thank you. And I'd like to get started by introducing our speakers today. We have Mónica Pachón Buitriago, who is Associate Professor for Universidad de los Andes in Colombia. We also have Marty Alcon, who is the in-country coordinator in the Philippines for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. We also have my colleague, Asim Khan, who is Associate Director of Communications at GHAI for Road Safety. And we also have Luke Thielander, who is the Senior Digital Director at Global Wave Digital. Now, just a brief overview of the webinar series. So GHAI's goal in coordinating this was to guide participants through the different campaign advocacy phases and how communications would be impacted for each phase. So during each of the webinars, you'll have the opportunity to learn from global best practices as well as from each other. And each of our webinars will be complemented by materials that can be used for your road safety campaigns. So we will have available anything from data points and reports to assist with your communications messaging to social media templates for your social media platforms. And we will show you exactly where those items will live on the GHAI website later today. So we have a total of 4 webinars, including this one through the end of the year. See the upcoming dates here on this slide. The next one will be held September 13th, and it will focus on creative ways to collectively mobilize toward advocacy action. And of course, we will continue to keep everyone informed via announcements or reminders as each of the webinars approaches. Now, diving a little bit deeper into this webinar, some of the objectives we have is for participants to develop an understanding of each of the different advocacy phases, which go from phase 1, where you're just getting started with your campaign, or phase 10, where your campaign is in a call to action phase. We will talk about how to identify which phase your campaign might be in, who the target audience is, and how to keep it moving forward. We will also cover the differences in communications messaging when campaigns are building that initial awareness versus when your campaign might be at the issuing urgency phase. And then, of course, we will hear how road safety campaigns in Colombia and the Philippines apply these communications concepts, what worked well. And then with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Asim Khan.
Thank you, Cindy. So one of the things we like to do when we go in country is help coalitions with their communications and as they move through their policy roadmap. So as you can see here, we have 3 different stages, and we have them numbered by like urgency. So 1 would be public awareness, and this would be messaging at the beginning of a policy as a beginning of tackling an issue. So as you see here is public awareness. So that would be the first stage. The second stage, which is number 5, is issue urgency. And then the last stage is number 10, which is call for action. So as you move through your policy navigation, it's really good to keep these three things in mind as you craft your messaging, your creatives, and how you want to inform your audience, your key stakeholders as to what you are attempting to do. So the first stage, public awareness, is, letting people know what the problem is, what the issue is, why it's important. The next step, which is issue urgency, is informing people why it's important and why we are, you as a coalition are working on this issue. And then the last step, number 10, which would be the call for action. What is your policy objective and what are you trying to do? So these are the three phases. We'll get into more depth, but I wanted to give a quick introduction as to this framework and how we present it in country and how it can help you. Next slide. So the first phase is building awareness. Public awareness is the foundation that each phase builds upon. As you build awareness, you will be able to educate people to what the issue is and why it's important. And then as you move through to stage, the next stage, you won't have to worry about people knowing what the problem is or what the issue is. You've already kind of addressed that. And as your messaging moves forward, your messaging will become more action oriented. So that's why we have them as a scale from 1 to 10. So you can kind of identify how you want to gauge your messaging through the different phases. So for, building awareness, you have a example here that says, avoid regrets, use car seats now. This is kind of telling people, like, why car seats are important, why we have to do it, in your country, in the country that, you're working in. If there is a law or there is no law, you're able to address that in this point, in this area, and kind of explain to people, why this issue is important. Next step. So creating urgency. This is an important one because this leads to your policy act, your call for action. So in these phases, you're going to be looking to use statistics, data, testimonials, anything you can use to allow or to inform people on how to really, what the real issue is and why it's important. And this creating this sense of urgency also will help you get, maybe some political will, some support from the community as to the importance of the issue. This phase will help you build the groundwork for momentum and support for the specific policy advocacy that you'll go through in phase 10. Next slide. Now, this is the key. This is your policy action. This is the advocacy moment that you're pushing for. There are a lot of, in our experience, we see there is a lot of tendency for people to push from 0 to 10 in one step. And we're trying to help people understand, like, while, there will be moments where that might be an issue, but moving forward, it's really beneficial from your communications, your advocacy communication strategies to kind of build to this. And this is the key. This is your policy objective. What are you trying to achieve? What is the regulation, the law, the policy that you're trying to implement that will save lives? And this is how you build your foundation for your audience. And this is what you're looking for. So as you move through your campaign progress, keeping these three phases in action as you craft your messages will be really important. Next slide. And I think this side, Luke will be taking over. Yeah. Luke, I'll hand it over to you.
Absolutely. Thanks for that great start to the discussion. So, when we were thinking about the advocacy phases, I think the first question is kind of how do we understand where we are in the phases. And so I know, sometimes it can feel a little technical to to see the graph and think about kind of practically where you are. And so we kind of broke it down into thinking about kind of what is the current public understanding and support of the issue, and what is the policy status, and when is your policy opportunity. And so generally, if public understanding and support of the issue is low, and you can know that through focus groups, through understanding the online conversation, polling, on issue awareness in government and stakeholders, and understanding your policy status. So understanding kind of what the general awareness of issue is among government targets, kind of who your champions are, when is your window. That will kind of tell you kind of where you are. I think it's somewhat instinctive for many of you, but we wanted to have a structure for understanding this. Next slide. And so, why we think this is important. I think it's really important for your messaging and content to be aligned with your advocacy strategy. And that's kind of number one, what we're talking about here. So then when key opportunities arise, they can, we can take advantage of it. Make sure that strong public support is established before, starting a campaign, and that we're moving beyond awareness raising when it's needed. And so really it's about alignment and making sure that the communications works for the advocacy campaign, because at the end of the day, no matter how successful your advocacy campaign is, if you are focused on raising awareness and we're trying to pass a bill, that's not going to be effective from an advocacy perspective. Next slide. So we're doing a few interactives. So all three of these are just for one phase. So I think this is follows from what we were just talking about. But if there's no upcoming policy window, a lack of widespread understanding and enthusiasm for the issue, and no strong awareness in government, if you want to write in the chat what phase you think that would be, just to kind of get our juices flowing, since I know it's early and late for a lot of people and in different places. I see a 5. Let's see, anybody else? I think generally, if we're talking about, all of this is subjective, but generally, if there's no upcoming policy window and there's no strong awareness among the public or the government, we're talking about, next slide, phase 1. So you're really just getting started, you're building awareness, and you're laying the groundwork for the phases to come ahead, so that when we have a policy window, there's the awareness and kind of urgency within the government structure and within the communications campaign. So then on the other side, if there's an imminent policy window, strong public understanding and key champions in place, I think, opposite of what we said before, go ahead and put in the chat if you have thoughts, the Q&A. But I think, generally when it's the opposite side, we're talking about a phase 10. So we can go ahead. So just to get us thinking a little bit, I think it's helpful for the reasons that we said, that we're really talking about alignment, and we're talking about making sure that our communications is effective for the bottom line, which is the advocacy campaign. We can keep going. We wanted to give a few minutes for you all to use this framework to think about kind of where your campaign is. So if you are thinking about this public awareness, issue urgency, or call for action with the imminent activity, I think, where would you say that that you are at? Go ahead and put in the Q&A. We'll give you about a minute to think about it. I think about kind of what your content is right now. Think about what your messaging is. We have sample messaging here. Think about kind of when your policy objective is, like what timeline you're in, and kind of what needs to happen before the timeline is kind of imminent for the policy change. So if you all want to give it just a thought, we're also gonna have some time probably after this as a follow-up for you all to give this some more thought. But if there are any initial thoughts about where kind of your campaign, your coalition is, we'd love to kind of give you a minute to think about that now. I think, you know, a lot of you have policy goals coming up, you know, immediately. Some of you have policy that you're working on right now. Some of you, it might be, you know, 6 month, 12-month window. We're still kind of putting together the pieces for even thinking about what the policy might be. So I think, you know, all of these are valid and important kind of steps, but from a communications perspective, it's helpful to kind of understand where we're at to figure out how to craft messaging. So I have one public awareness around child restraint systems in the chat. Thank you for sharing. I think, you know, we'll between phases 5 and 10 in Vietnam, depending on the issues, we'll kind of have this be in the background of if you have thoughts, you know, feel free to share, and then we'll have this be something that we continue to think about throughout the presentation and throughout the follow-up in the time ahead. So we can keep going. So I'm going to go through kind of the structure, some thoughts around the different public awareness and issue urgency. We're going to go through this rather quickly, but we'll share this afterwards. You know, this will be kind of a resource for you. So you can go ahead. So when we're talking about public awareness, I think Asim talked a little bit about this. We're talking about content that clearly explains the issue at the individual personal level. So we're talking about content that helps audiences understand the impact on them and why they should care about it on an individual level versus a societal level, which is more of a level of a phase 5. So we're talking about change in perceptions and behavior commitment. You can go to the next stop. So example, awareness messaging, we're talking about it's important to choose the right child restraint or helmet, pledging to drive safely, learn more. All of these are talking about from a personal perspective that people should change their behavior and understand how this impacts them personally. You can keep going. So I think, raising awareness is generally broad, but can be targeted if we're, focusing specifically on parents or professional drivers. But it's important to understand kind of who your audience is for your awareness. And then, when we're talking about calls to action, it's generally a pledge of behavior, commitment, sharing a story, signing up as an advocate. So soft, we're talking about soft actions that demonstrate personal commitment to the issue and personal understanding of the personal impact of the issue. You can keep going. And so when we're talking about awareness, awareness alone does not drive policy wins. So when we're moving along the advocacy phase continuum and building toward eventual advocacy action. Keep going. So when assessing if your campaign is ready to move into the next phase, I think, again, we want all of this to be relevant. So understanding kind of how this is, how this impacts how you see your own campaigns. So when we're thinking about moving into the issue urgency phase, generally, there's already significant support in the media. There's road safety champions in place in both the government and the media. There's initial meetings with legislative champions that are happening, and clarity on scope and timeline for upcoming policy window. So sometimes in the awareness, we're still kind of putting together the pieces for what the policy goals going to look like and what the timeline is going to be, but really kind of moving it to phase 5. We know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, generally, and kind of are moving the pieces towards that action. So when we're talking about issue urgency, we're really moving from a personal to a societal frame, where increasing urgency for swift action through policy. So it's not just an issue of personal adherence to laws, but road safety is really a collective societal failing and a public health emergency that needs to be addressed through policy. And so we're moving from personal, which is I need to wear seatbelts, wear helmets, use child restraints, in order to make my family safe, into we need collective action at the societal level in order to protect children, families, pedestrians through policy action. So the goal is widespread public buy-in, calling out for urgent need for change. The key word being urgent, that we're moving from a personal lighter frame into an urgency frame to move forward. So your target audiences should resonate strongly with the urgency. So when you're talking to parents, perhaps about child restraints, you're talking about this is needed at the policy level, change is needed in order to save children, not only your children, but to save children throughout our society. And so when we're talking about calls to action, it's still not necessarily, tagging decision makers, but it might be a soft petition on the need for action from decision makers. It might be a demonstration of issue importance, sharing of stories, but all within this frame of why change is urgently needed, not just on a personal level, but on a collective level through policy change. Issue urgency, children are dying on our roads every day. leading cause of death for children. Frequent deaths is a crisis. So we're still using kind of the data, but the language that we're using is moving into this urgency frame, and using data in a way that's driving urgent action. Okay. So we can go through. We have a couple of interactives now. And so this is not 1, 5, 10. This is focusing on 1 through 5. So we just place these messages on a scale from 1 to 5. If people can take a minute to read these messages and think about where you would place them on a scale from 1 to 5. Let's have you place in the chat kind of what order you would put message A, B, and C if you were placing them on the scale. So which message is more awareness, which message is more urgency, and what's kind of in between. So I'll give you a minute to read through the messages, and then we'll have you pop in the order that you think they go in. And yeah, just throw it out there. We have BCA. Thank you, Daniela. I think we can go to the next slide. And we have BCA. So this always driving at safe speeds can help save the lives of you and other road users is the one, whereas we must prevent deaths through policy is the 5. And so I see a couple other people. I think it's more of an art than a science, but helping us think through, the personal to the societal, whereas the data can kind of be used in both. So we'll go to the next slide. So the same thing, but in creative instead of visuals. If you want to pop in the chat, in the Q&A, sorry, kind of how you would organize these on the scale from 1 to 5. I have a couple coming in. So let's go to the next slide. I have it in the same. This be, really focusing on kind of how to use a car seat. So it's more on the personal level. Then we have the statistic, and then we have this leading cause of death of our kids worldwide is a crisis. So that's the urgency messaging. I think it's more to help us think through kind of what this looks like, so that it's not theoretical. And then we'll go kind of more into some case studies or campaign highlights in a little bit that will show you some more examples, and we'll have more opportunities for learning to come. Next slide. So I'm gonna hand it off to our colleagues to introduce the campaign highlights.
Thanks, Luke. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. This is Marty from the Philippines, and I'm going to present to you the campaign highlights for the child restraint system here in the Philippines. Next slide, please. At the beginning, there was very low public awareness for child restraint system. It wasn't even a priority for the public or for the government. So there was a need to invest in building out the supporter base around why child restraints were important. It was a low-lying fruit, and we felt that this is something we can convince our legislators to pass. Next slide, please. So major challenges in phases 1 to 5 is that parents felt that by holding their children tight in front seats, they could protect their children. There were also cultural and emotional aspects to balance the campaign, because in the Philippines, the mothers specifically felt that by hugging the kids, they are giving them enough protection inside the car. So we need to debunk that idea. Next slide, please. So the solution is that our campaign message focused on using a car seat is the best way to demonstrate your love for your children. It took a lot of communication and media activities to communicate this message. We highlighted the fact that it was important to let the parents know that while their embrace is a way of protecting their children, it is not enough in case of a car crash. And we supported the emotional message with data and case studies. And one of the case studies came from our Road City champion. Her name is Jelena Magdangal, who's a very popular Filipino actress here in the Philippines, because she and her son got involved in a car crash, and it was a car seat that saved her son. So next slide, please. So that video was the public service announcement, a video ad, an ad that we aired on television to support our key message. Basically, the idea is you need to put your children on car seats so that they are safe inside cars in case of a road crash. We also did a lot of communication activities that included, as I mentioned earlier, case studies and country level data. We engaged the UP Public Health to come up with data that show the extent of damage to children in case they are involved in car crash. We also did a journalist training and spokespersons training. So we prepared our spokesperson to face the media because we anticipated that this will be an issue that will be met with public skepticism because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, parents felt that they are enough. We also did photo exhibits in the House of Representatives to communicate visually the advocacy, and we integrated earned in social media. We did one-on-one meetings with decision makers, with the media, with the public. We aired TV commercials, and as I mentioned earlier, we had influencer activities. So these are just two of the, I think we had 20 influencers who talked about the urgency on and the need to pass the child restraint system bill law. Sorry. Next slide, please. So the lesson learned is that first, case studies are very important because it will humanize the issue. So the public were able to relate once they were able to hear Jelena talk about her own experience, once they were able to read about her experience. The public listens to celebrities, influencers that they trust. So please engage them in your advocacy. So this is very true in the case of the Philippines, where the public are really into celebrities and influencers. Your messaging has to be understood by anyone and everyone, which means we have to use less technical words. So we laymanize a lot of terms and explain it in a way that the parents will be able to appreciate and understand. Number 4, you need the data to have convincing arguments. As I mentioned earlier, it's also important to target parents as a core audience, as they are the overall decision makers for their children. After all, they will be the one who will be buying the child car seats. So it's important that they see the value of having a CRS. And then understand the cultural context of engaging with parents and children on road safety. So this is the one I mentioned earlier. So we need to disabuse the minds of parents that they are enough. So, and by putting their child on car seat, that doesn't mean that they love their children any less. In fact, it makes them it allowed them to show that they love their children more because they come up with another way of better protecting their children inside cars. And lastly, it's important to find ways to make your issue urgent. So be creative in pushing for your policy goal. As I mentioned earlier, we did a lot of one-on-one meetings. We brought the issue to Congress directly by doing photo exhibits. So next slide, please. Yeah, so that's for the Philippines. Thanks, everyone.
Hello. Can you listen to me?
Yes.
Thank you, Cindy. I was wondering if you could check on the audio for the video because I was unable to hear the audio for the Philippines video.
Yes, we can check that.
Thank you. Should I start or okay. Well, hi, my name is Mónica Pachón. I am a professor in the Universidad de los Andes, and I'm part of the project Conduce a 50 Vive al 100. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what we've done so far in the communication strategy. So what do we aim to do? I am part of a university that is large. It's private. It's in Bogota City, and what the researchers that are part of this project want to do is to advocate for speed limits that are compatible with our activities that are carried out in cities, such as walking, cycling, or using public spaces. So we basically are proposing and advocating for speed limits and speed management plans. Next slide, please. But one of the things that we discovered is very quickly is that we couldn't call ourselves Universidad de los Andes, despite the fact that we are in the Universidad de los Andes, because of course, people associate the university with other activities and not road safety or this type of issue. So we created a brand within the university that is this one, trying to tell a story. And the story is precisely that it's an initiative that promotes road safety and encourages responsible driving practices using the 50 kilometers per hour. And also trying to suggest that if you actually drive at 50, you will have a fulfilling life and you will live up to you are 100. So this was a very important piece of our communication strategy, because sometimes these projects belong to organizations that have another brand, another label, and it is hard for your target audience to understand what is it that you're talking about. So this is the first step that we took. Next slide, please. So of course, I'm not going to repeat this, but we want to create awareness, create action on priority issues, and also one of the things that we wanted to do is to be part of a community. In Colombia, we have several organizations that advocate for road safety, but the more the better, right? And so we wanted to be part of these joint recognition of organizations and try to give them a technical support, but also, you know, a little bit of the sensation that this is something that more people are talking about. Next slide, please. So one of the first things that we wanted to do was to create awareness, and this is the way that we did it at first. In the commemoration of the Victims' Day, we sent T-shirts to a lot of spokesperson, public pundits, and leaders. And in Colombia, you say, put the T-shirt on, póngase la camiseta, means, you know, you want to play the game, right? You're ready to play the game. So putting yourself the T-shirt and giving the message and creating a video was very important for us. And this was a big win for our communication strategy in our country. And we were able to create a bit of a trend of discussing this and making people realize the amount of tragedy that this the fact that we had so much crashes and fatalities within roads. Next, please. In 2022, we continue to do this, and the idea, of course, is that this digital strategy continues and goes on, and more people have their T-shirts on with the commemoration kit, printed instructions to tell people what to say, what are the messages. So making it easier for people to participate. But this time we are not only targeting pundits or targeting you know, well-known people or academics, but we targeted, you know, kids, different type of spokesperson that would discuss or share their feelings about how is it absurd that people die on the street going for, you know, buying the groceries and things like that. So again, we are always trying to create awareness, because this is an issue that people do not have a clear awareness of until they are victims of a crash or an accident. So the first insight for us is that numbers are forgettable, but stories aren't. At the beginning of our journey as a project, we were very we made a lot of emphasis on numbers and figures and trying to understand and explain the technicalities of speed, but it was very difficult for us to have any reactions to our messages, because this is something that people see every day. And in Colombia, given our situation with violence, this is not even considered a violent death. It's more like, you know, fate. And this was very difficult for us to deal with. But one of the things that we discovered is that telling stories was very important. So the insight is empathy and connection will make people understand better the impact of road accidents in their lives. And by sharing these personal stories, we actually were able to convince more people than with the data and the you know, and the difficulties that this meant for so much people. But so what we did, next slide, was to take advantage, and I know this sounds horrible, but to take advantage of a story that happened while we were doing the awareness campaign. And it's a story of a kid that died on the streets of Colombia while cycling. And this is the image of the mother that we talked to her. We went to visit her and ask her to see if we could give the bill the name of Julian Esteban. And she was very happy to do it, and she became one of our spokesperson, and the law was passed with the name of Julian Esteban. And when we were discussing with congressmen why was it important to pass speed limits and speed management plans, the discussion was not about how many people are dying annually, what is it? No, it was about Julian Esteban, and this was the main point that convinced legislators to pass the bill, because it was unacceptable not to do it, given the story of this kid. Next slide, please. Technical is right, but strive to reach a wider audience, and this is something that most of us have said before. It is important to make communication simple and understand that not everybody is going to get into the detail, but making road safety accessible for everyone is very important. And we need a 10-year-old to understand the message. So for example, for us, speed management plans was very difficult. So what we decided to do was to cut the message into very little pieces and to help people understand that, you know, putting a pacification in roads, things so people cannot go that faster is speed management plan, and that type of cutting the message into very small, understandable actions was important. Next, please. So what we did was to create TikTok and understand and talk to people on the streets and create an experience on understanding what the bill was about. And so it was fun, but it was not about tragedy or urgency. It was about having fun, understanding what the bill was about. And this, for us, is a combination of the Conduce a 50, Vive al 100, yes, living a fulfilling life. You need to understand the risk, but when we want people to share and viralize content, most people won't do it if it's tragic or if it's very technical. But if it's somebody like you talking about this, it may have a different feeling. Next. Another thing that we discovered personally in this journey is that sharing stories is very, very important. And so we became I don't know if you know Herbalife way of being, but we became the Herbalife of road safety. We wanted to tell stories and we wanted to hear stories. And we found stories in unexpected places. We found advocates that were willing to talk to us and willing to share their stories, not in the normal space, but in personal conversations and friends and family dinners where people would share their story, understand what we were doing, and help us. And this is very important to this advocacy, because again, this is a very personal suffering and people do not share these stories as much. But if you start looking for the stories will come to you. And this is something that has happened in the university. This has happened within our communities, and I think this is important to understand. Not only we would like to find big spokesperson, but sometimes these small stories can make a huge difference in the way that you build your communication strategy. Next. This is our last insight, and is that people remember how you make them feel. And I think this is the part that we work on the hardest, because despite the fact that we enacted a bill, right, and we have speed limits now nationally recognized that are the ones that we wanted, and we have the enactment also in the bill of the requirement of the speed limit, speed management plans. There is no because our country is decentralized, the action is decentralized, and so we need much more awareness every day for this to come true. So what we decided to do was to incorporate emotions into our campaign. If we want to create behavioral change about speed is it's related to the macho culture, to love speeding as feeling this certain air of superiority and emotion, but also making mistakes on this can generate shame, embarrassment, and it produces this sense of danger. So what we wanted right now, and this is where we are at, is to show danger, right? To show risk and not show the result, because when we show the result, speed is not there. But when we show them what is happening, then things, I think, have a different impact. So I think I'm over my time. So if you want to go to the last video. So it's not sounding. Can you check the sound, please? I don't know if others have the same problem as me, but okay. I think you have to reshare to have the sound.
Thank you, Monica. And it seems like we're still unable to hear.
Yeah.
So apologies about that, but we will have, maybe we can take some questions and answers now at this time. And then the version that will live online of this presentation will have the audio for both this video that was just shared and the earlier one for Marty. And maybe Laura, while we do the Q&A, maybe we can try and test it a little bit some more. But yeah, we can plan on that. So thank you to both Marty and Monica for sharing this important work. I think it's such great insight and information to keep in mind. So again, yeah, I just wanted to take some time to have some questions from the public, from participants. If you could put them in the chat, and we'll be sure to share them or read them aloud. And everyone who's presented can answer. They don't have to be specific to the case study. It can be perhaps you're having questions about the phases in advocacy and communications, or perhaps one of the details that the case studies shared really sparked an interest, or might be where you are. So yeah, I just want to open it up now to a couple of questions. Oh, and we have one here already, so I'll just share that. So this question is for Monica. And Mikola Uchuk is asking, how did you make it possible to have videos on TikTok in a positive context while talking about car accidents and deaths? It looks like she's seen some people smiling, talking about speeding, and it actually, of course, is a negative thing. So she's interested in knowing what was the theme of the videos, and what was your strategy on creating TikToks that really might help people think about and change their attitudes or minds about speeding and just road safety in general. Oh, sorry, Monica, we can't hear you.
Thank you for your question. I think there's, as I said, two sides of our campaign. One of the sides talks about the danger and the basic, and we even, we say this stupid behavior of speeding, and the other talks about how is it that is great to live a joyful life and a wonderful life till you're 100, right? So what we do in these TikToks is to talk about the law that was enacted. And what we do is an experience with people saying, they're not talking about crashes or anything. They're talking about speed limits. So we do quizzes to them, right? Like, which one is the acceptable speed when you go blah, blah, blah. And then they said 50 or 60 or 70 or 80, and you make them sort to be in a contest to understand the bill, right? What is it compatible with speed management plans? Oh, this is compatible, and one of the options may be ridiculous, right? But the other two options make sense, and you try and explain to people what is it that we're talking about, but without the sense of tragedy, but trying to tell them this is important and you should know this information. But the experience that you make them have on the street while socializing the bill is fun, right? We have different tones to our communication strategy, but I think if you only use the fatalities tone, you lose engagement very fast. The first day people are like, oh yes. Second day, okay, whatever. Third day, they don't even care. They don't even take a look, at least in our context. So this is why this is important for us. The videos are very useful. So I would encourage you to see the videos, to understand the tones that we're managing, that we're trying to bring into the conversation. But it is risky, but it's important. I think it's important for us to have different tones, to say, if you drive safely, you can have fun, right? That's the type of message that we're trying to give. I don't know if I wish I could, you could see the video. I'm sorry.
Actually, you know what? I think we can play the video now. We're gonna try.
Okay.
So hold on 1
So
second.
if you go to the, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
If you go to the previous slide, please. To that one. And if you go to the one below, okay, you can play both because there is very short. No audio. I think you have to, when you share, you have to make a tick on share audio and video to optimize in when you are sharing your screen. Did you do that, Laura?
yes, actually.
Okay.
Restarting that.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry.
God, my God, 65.
Yes, the audio is super important to understand the tone, but don't worry, they can see it in the when you put the presentation online. That's okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll email all the videos also as links. So.
All right, and we have another question here for Marty to maybe share a little bit more about how you found influencers, especially influencers with personal stories.
Yeah, thanks for that. So basically, I was on the lookout for possible influencers who would join us in our road safety advocacy. And we scanned the internet for their stories. And one of the compelling stories that we were able to find out was the one from Julina Magdangal, who, because she was very vocal about how the child car seat saved her son at the time when they were engaged in a car crash. So she was very vocal about it. It was well published. She went on TV interviews. She had full-length articles published on both mainstream media and online media. So that's how we found out that she could be our champion. Apart from that, we also tapped on our network of celebrity friends. Because for me, I also have celebrity friends in the Philippines. So I approached them, especially the mothers, the young mothers. So and they were very excited because they want other parents to understand that child car seat really is not expensive if you think about how it will protect your children inside cars. So that's how we were able to gather influencers and celebrity advocates.
Thank you, Marty. And then here's another question for Monica. If you would mind sharing your process on finding those important stories to tell, and how you went about it, and how, yeah, just if you can share with us your process.
Yes. So one of the, as Marty was saying, you become obsessed with this topic, and then you're looking for stories, and the stories find you as well. Unfortunately, in our case, it's the tragedy that's around us. So Fernanda Torres, the mother of Julian Esteban, is a perfect example of something that you don't want, you never want to see happen, right? But then it happens, and when we were in a webinar, and we discussed, you know, this bill should be baptized. This bill should have a name of one of these people that are suffering, like the mother of Fernanda, and there we found the case. When we did the commemoration day of victims and this is I think an opportunity again in the midst of tragedy. When I was looking into people that would help me in the commemoration, in the victims day, and the commemoration of the victims day, I talked to some professors, right, that are in the university, and I was like, no, because you know how many people are dying each year, and they're like, yeah, I know, my sister died. She was in a crash, you know, 2 years ago, or yes, I know, my father was killed by, or my grandfather, and so it was, suddenly people were talking about this, and nobody ever talked about it, but there was this opportunity of advocacy, and then somehow this story starting appearing. And so in Twitter, for example, I would have messages, like personal messages delivered to me saying, hey, I see that you're doing this, and I'm very interested in helping, because this happened to me, or this happened to my family, or I was in a crash and the guy left. And so those stories became part of our daily you know, work to recruit these people. And so when we were in webinars, or we were with legislators, we would bring up these stories, and we would invite those people who considered, you know, the topic important, that were able to tell the story, but that were also, you know, victims of these issues. And so it was easier to convince legislators, just because of what, you know, of how it feels to say no to an issue when you have somebody in front of you, or a story that is undeniably unfair and unjust and stupid, because it could be avoided if the authority was doing what they needed to do. So this is the way that we started finding, you know, voices that would help the cause.
Thank you, Monica. And I think Laura is going to try the video one more time. Otherwise, for sure, you'll be able to see it in the PowerPoint version that's going to be on the website. So let's give it another try here. Let's see.
So this video, every time that I show this video, people get scared. They're like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And I said, yes, this is the type of risk that we need to avoid. This is the type of risk that needs to be, you know, if we want to be able to walk on our streets, we need to say, this is the street that I pass every day, and I feel threatened by cars, by anybody that moves, and I want the state to, you know, to do something about it. I want the city to do something about it. And the speed management plan is about that. So it's not it's more the feeling, and then we ask them to do something, and a lot of people created videos on what they considered a risky behavior or a situation of risk that has to be dealt with that we can convert into, you know, you have to intervene this street or this space. And can you go to the previous one just to show you the example of happiness, right? So the one up is making fun of the person who's speeding, and the other one is a little bit different. So just if you want to put it in.
I'm too sexy for my car, too sexy for my car, too sexy by far.
So it's stop the show. Speed can be mortal, right? Can be deadly. And the other one is the other tone. Who didn't want to be hurt? So to live intensely, drive at 50, to live to 100, right? So the idea is that we're saying that you can be super fast and, you know, speedy in other types of behaviors, but not in your car, right? But trying to make it a little bit less dramatic, but more, this is an opportunity, right? We can be extreme in other things, not while driving our cars.
Thank you, Monica. I think those are all great examples of the different tones on such an important topic like road safety, which, yes, it can definitely be very sad, eye-opening, but I think it's interesting to see the different tones that you can take with trying to catch the attention of the public on this important issue. And now I think Laura's also going to try capturing or playing the video for the Philippines as well. Let's see if we can get the audio to work. Thank you, Laura. Now I'm just, I think we're coming up on time here, but I think we have time for a few more questions. So this question is from Dugu Umongo, and he's saying, our organization has been leading the National Commemoration of Road Crash Victims Day since 2019, but we continue to struggle with getting stakeholders' interest in supporting and participating in this activity. Could it be our messaging? If yes, how can we identify appealing messages to get people into participating in this activity?
If you want, I can come in to talk. I don't know.
Yes, that'd be great.
Well, what we did, thank you for the question. I think what you have to do, I don't know if you're, digital is not enough, and asking for people to do something is not enough. I think what we did when we sent the kit and we sent the t-shirt and we pushed people to participate, that was the key moment for us, right? That we understood that the people who received the kit said, oh, I have a responsibility, I need to do this, right? And so I don't know how you're doing it. But my suggestion would be to have a good plan, and I can share it, what the one that we did here, and it's, you know, first step, second step, third step, and so we are like, you know, being very keen on, okay, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. These are the messages that you have to send. Make it super easy to people to participate, but make it very difficult for them to say, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, right? And the more people that you find, the better. Also, what I did with my team was to go on the streets with the t-shirts and the messages and ask people, you know, go for it, right? Let me tell you a story about what is happening, and send a message of how you feel about what I just told you. And so we produced a lot of content by doing this, and this helped us. Also, the organizations that surround Conduce 50 in Colombia, Red Papás, you know, it's called a network of parents, you know, La Liga para la Violencia Vial, against, you know, violence on streets. I don't know how to translate that, but anyway, all the organizations that we that are part of a coalition helped us as well, with different type of groups, right? Parents, advocates, victims. And so this is the thing that I think you have to do, is just to go create, I don't know, a t-shirt, something, and make it so easy to participate and so hard and so embarrassing not to. And that's what helped us make this work. I don't know what the experiences of others are.
Thank you, Monica. And does anybody else want to add some insight to that particular question? Okay, and now we have a question for Marty. If you can share a little bit more about the process for putting together the public service announcement.
So when we did the public service announcement, that video, we initially had some sort of a focus group discussion among select parents, what would motivate them to further protect their kids inside cars, what would drive them, what would be emotionally compelling. And then from there, we did pre-production, we did storyboard, we did the script and the storyboard, and then had a pre-test of how it will be perceived by our target audience. And once we were settled that it would be an effective video, that's when we started the production work, the shoot, and then the editing. And then we aired that for 1 month in a high rating TV show, because we want as many people to see that video. So that's how we do it. We did focus group discussion, we did pre-test. So that idea really came from our target audience. So we know that it will be it will be accepted, and it will trigger people to support the advocacy.
Thank you, Marty. So I think now we're going to go ahead and switch gears, just to make sure we're on time and we don't make anybody late to any other meetings or personal commitments. I know it's nighttime or evening time in some other places. So we wanted to go ahead and just share with you where this presentation and some related materials will live. So you will be able to download a road safety data sheet to assist with messaging development. So that data sheet will have some statistics around the 5 road safety risk factors, and some other resources as you're thinking about building out the campaign or continuing to build out your campaign. So all of that will be available online. We'll also have some sample social media templates that might be used for your campaigns in phase 1, phase 5, or phase 10. And this will all, again, just live on the GHAI website that will go live on Wednesday morning. So that's where you'll have access to all of these materials, and some data sheets and worksheets. And then here on the next slide, we have a preview of the social media templates. We have a few here, as I mentioned. They will be focused on the different phases of communications advocacy. Some of them include some data points, some are just very direct with the messaging. And then now, as a couple next steps, first, I just want to thank Marty and Monica again for sharing your campaigns, for sharing these successful campaigns. I think they provided a lot of insight to the different participants, to myself, as I'm getting acclimated with everything at the organization. And so we actually will be following up with an additional coffee hour that's directly related to this webinar, where it can be a small group learning session or a learning opportunity. We can have some more questions and answers. We can collaboratively go over how to develop messages for your campaigns at the different phases, or if there are any specific questions that you have that we might be able to help with, we would love to do it on a more informal setting where it's just us and the different participants. We will send out this communication a few days after this webinar, and we'll provide a date. So again, it's just like a coffee hour learning opportunity, or just to chat and talk about your campaigns. We would love to do that. And then of course, the next webinar will be hosted on September 12th. Stay tuned for more information on how to register. So if you received an invitation or announcement for this, you'll continue to be receiving those same announcements for the Road webinar series until they end in the month of December. And then as a final part of this webinar, we want to make sure that we continue to get your feedback on the topics and the content that we're presenting, because this will help us continue to improve our offerings to best support your campaign. So we really want to hear what you feel is important, what you want to learn more about. Those are really the things that we want to hear about. So we are going to share a survey. It just takes 5 minutes to fill out. So if you could please do that, we would greatly appreciate it. And we will send it out via the chat. So I think it's already been sent out via the chat. If you just click on the link, it'll take you to an evaluation form for this webinar. Again, we just want to hear your thoughts and opinions to continue improving. And if you're not able to fill that out today, we will also send out a follow-up email with that link and the accompanying materials for today's session. So with that, I think we can go ahead and end the session. We look forward to seeing you again or hearing from you again on September 12th. Thank you again to all the participants, to the case studies that we had during today's webinar.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions.
Thanks, everyone.